Meta Monday episodes. I was playtesting lots of Machine Dramon in preparation for this week's Meta Monday episode, and while I had written the deck profile down and what I wanted to discuss, I felt there was something else that definitely needed to be talked about. The meta shift. With the sudden news and drop on Friday that new restrictions were hitting the Digimon trading card game, it upended all of the content I had planned in preparation for the next 2 weeks. Why? Because Crossheart. Crossheart was going to be one of the most dominating decks moving into BT10. Even with EX3, Japan saw little variation because the deck was a lot of value. Not expensive value to build, but the advantage it gained in terms of card draw and memory utilization. Let me break this down. Number 1, value was achieved through a lot of cards. Zenjiro's Tsurugi could gain you memory when you play a Digimon with Crossheart and its traits on your turn. While it doesn't trigger on security during your opponent's attack, you are still able to play Ballistamon as a blocker. But when it gets back to your turn, playing any of your Crossheart Digimon can be immediate value. Likewise, Akari Hinomoto gains you card advantage, meaning playing a Darulamon on your turn off her effect immediately replaces one of the 2 cards you just used. Shoutmon Cross 4 was the real MVP of the deck, allowing you to draw 2 cards when you played it, and if you had all the components, multiple copies of these tamers out, it was more memory, more draw, a 2-card draw of Cross 4's effect, and possibly even more. And number 2, the deck didn't care whether its Digimon got deleted or not. So you swing into security, your Darulamon is deleted. Oh no, to the trash. Wait, nope. Save. Save it for later under Tamer. Unless your opponent's deck ran cards that suspended your Tamers and prevented them from using their effects, or deleted Tamers or bounced Digimon back, your deck was not prepared for the matchup. Even worse, bricking felt like your opponent was going to achieve a lot very quickly. But now, suddenly the deck lost 2 pieces which made it the deck it was in Japan. And while North America gets to experience this for another short week and a half from the upload of this video, the meta changes completely. However, before going into the deep dive, if you enjoy these types of videos, do consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell for more future content. The restrictions that Bandai kindly threw at us a week after the official release of BT10 limited Doru Greymon from BT7. This was expected because Japan had already restricted Doru Greymon before the release of EX3. But here, we were given the biggest surprise with not 1, not 2, but 3 additional restrictions as well. Other creators have already gone into the discussion of it, but now with the meta upended, how does it change the meta? A lot of deck profiles I was going to do would heavily focus on thinking outside of the box and build to beat Crossheart, since statistically it would be a big appearance. Alphamon will see a significant decline in terms of play for the fact that you lose Doru Greymon, one of the biggest pieces that helped with OTKing your opponent. While the deck is not dead by any means, the deck will be slower and require you to innovate if you want to bring it to the competitive scene. But truly, the only deck that is dead at this point is Dex Doru Goromon. Without Doru Greymon, it is now no longer possible to utilize a quick climb into Dex Doru Greymon before jumping to a Doru Goromon, and so forth. Come on, Bandai, please print a new one, soon. Calling from Darkness was an interesting choice, considering this hit loop in a way. I know a lot of players felt this card was unfair, and in my mind I have to walk the fine line of, if you're going to say this is unfair, would you put Blinding Ray in a similar position? Overall, I've only ever run 1 copy of the card in a deck, so for me, this didn't affect any of my decks at all. But the biggest ones that we saw were Shoutmon Cross 4 and Sunrise Buster. Both cards see 4 copies, though Sunrise might be at 3 depending on your variant. And honestly was a huge shock to me, considering Cross 4 had been out for less than a month. Considering we had prior warnings to level 5 Argomon being limited to 1, this was definitely whiplash. But now with these restrictions, Crossheart loses a lot of that aggression potential. Security bombs have been minimized as well. With that in mind, the big question that everyone's been asking is Crossheart dead? Honestly, I think this gives a lot of room to innovate the deck. I'd seen a lot of profiles come up in the 3 weeks prior to the release of BT10, and every deck felt like it was the same deck profile. At least with restrictions, we might see some different variations of Cross Heart. But the purpose of this video is to more so talk about decks that have previously been played in BT9 that may resurge due to the drop in players utilizing Cross Heart and players moving a different direction. Already I anticipate Blue Flare, Dark Knightmon, and Bloom Lordmon to make appearances from BT10, with Bloom Lordmon getting more sustenance with EX3. Tribal Greymon and Black War Greymon decks will still be competitively viable for the protection and board control they have. But when it comes to Black-Red control decks, I don't think they'll be doing as well. But in terms of older decks, you can bet these 4 decks will make a return. Number 4. D-Reaper. D-Reaper is a deck that will continue to see play. I am honestly surprised this deck did not see more in the BT10 format in Japan, considering 1 or 2 copies of Gatekeeper can completely neuter a Crossheart deck from performing security checks with chip damage. But with Crossheart potentially being moved away from, Blue Flare does not utilize extra checks unless you're also utilizing the starter deck Greymon. Honestly, this could be a viable option since certain decks get the short straw with a restriction list. Number 3. Grandis Kuwagamon. Grandis spent a lot of time finding its pieces with many searchers, but in that regard, are there better ways to get there? I still think there's a lot of room for this deck to grow. And while BT10 does offer a Kokuamon that has a Digivolution cost of 0, EX3 offers no additional value for Insectoid Digimon and focuses heavily on dragons. Hence, Draconic Roar. But the OTK ability is even more safe without Sunrise Buster potentially waiting in the security. Number 2. Metal Garurumon X. Metal Garurumon X was, and still is, a very powerful deck. However, with Crossheart making its way into the format, Melga X now had to high roll into security whether it hit an option card like Sunrise Buster or not. Sunrise Buster could immediately wipe out your OTK strategy, and even then they could utilize blockers like Ballistamon or even Shoutmon Cross 5 to block attacks and material save. But while Crossheart was a potential problem for the deck, number 1 is the clear winner. Number 1. Security Control. Security Control was one of the decks that I thought wouldn't see too much play with the BT10 format. Considering Crossheart and Digicross decks in general don't care if their Digimon get deleted or not. Because of this, their cards were free value since no option card presently targets Tamers for destruction. And while there are cards that can suspend and bounce them, not many decks actually utilize them. But with Security Bombs back, this hurts the conventional decks that check security if it doesn't have the trashing option. With so many decks possibly seeing a resurgence with the restrictions to Crossheart, what are you excited to play now moving into BT10 or even EX3? Do you feel that Crossheart will still be popular enough to consistently top, or will the limitation of Cross 4 be enough to knock it out of the competition? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Presently with the restrictions list, this changes a lot of what I had planned in terms of deck profiles to test and where the format goes. It's a whole new meta to explore, and I'm excited for it. This is Digi-Panda, logging out.